Howdy, y'all. Welcome to Did You Pack Snacks? My name is Colin.
And I'm Meg.
And this is the family travel podcast where we chat all things high, all things low, and the long miles in between of traveling with kids. Can I get an amen, Megan?
Amen.
And boy, do we have an episode for you today, because we are going to talk about how to take that month-long trip, that month-long vacation, how to do it, and where to do it.
Right. Not just for people who are looking to sell their houses, quit their jobs, travel the world, but how you can navigate taking an extended vacation or adventure like that while keeping all of those things.
Right. We're not talking about, you don't have to be dramatic.
No.
You're not telling the world, I'm going to be a digital nomad now. No. Even if you want to work remote for a week, take a week off work, or you've saved up, this is your 10-year anniversary, you've saved your PTOs, and you're just going to go on the month-long trip. This is for you.
Right. We're going to tell you some tips on how to make it happen. But before we do that, we had some people send in some questions.
Specifically two.
We had two people send in one question each.
Right.
But we thought that it would be fun to answer them on the air.
Yeah, they're burning questions.
They're burning questions. So the first one was a friend wrote in and she said, hey, I noticed that when you were sharing on Instagram, you mentioned that you are grain-free, that you don't eat grain, gluten, or anything in your diet. She was like, that resonated with me because in my family, we have a lot of allergies and it makes me apprehensive to travel internationally. Can you talk more about that? So I realized I hadn't shared much about that on here, so I thought I'd just throw in my 2 cents.
Yeah, because I want nothing more for this friend to travel more.
Right.
That is the goal here.
Yes, to try to empower as best I can. So for me, this past year has been a whole health journey. I've alluded to that a little bit on the podcast, but there were some things that were tearing me up inside.
Like what?
Like grain. So after some blood work and consulting with the doctor, I eliminated that from my diet for the last 12 months, and it's been night and day difference. I'm sick a lot less. I could go into all the benefits that it's done just for me personally. It was the best move for me. But that does present some challenges because a lot of food, as you may imagine, or meals revolve around grains.
Oh, lots of bread, lots of rice, lots of noodles.
Yeah, and that can be a little bit tricky when you're traveling internationally, and there are some destinations that are more challenging than others. You know, for example,
the whole continent of Asia.
Yeah, that one's a doozy. But just in general, it's forced me to be a lot more mindful, and it's forced me to anticipate meals way ahead of time. So an example would be on our very last trip that we went on to the Faroe Islands in Iceland. If you haven't listened to those podcasts, it's the last 3 that we shared on our channel, so you can go back and listen or watch those. But when we were there, they're more remote. There's fewer restaurants to choose from. And so what that looked like for me is when I was traveling there, I packed in my suitcase a ton of easy snacks. For me, that's like protein bars, beef jerky. What else did I bring? Those were the 2 primary ones that I brought this time. And then when we're in country, we're forever stopping at a grocery store.
Right.
So stocking up on fresh fruit or maybe like charcuterie type snacks, in case we get to a lunchtime and there's nothing available at a restaurant or a gas station. So it kind of just means that food takes up a lot of space in my anticipation or in my brain, honestly, while we're traveling, is I'm kind of always thinking ahead at least 2 meals to make sure that we have what we need. It also means that, for breakfast, we try to get places that have a hotel or have a hotel breakfast or have a kitchen so we can do bacon, eggs. Anyway, I think if it has to do with grain or gluten, that's like worldwide at this point. Everybody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about specifically our last trip, the Faroe Islands. You made it work with protein bars and beef jerky. For breakfast, you would do yogurt, you would do fruit. Mm-hmm. When I found, luckily, I don't know why, but the gas stations in the Faroe Islands all had fresh chicken kebabs.
Chicken kebabs.
And so every time we saw the gas station, shout out to Magen, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but I was like, oh, chicken stick time.
Yeah, I eat a lot of protein when we eat out.
Yeah.
And then in international context, when you're having a long day in an airport, that can get tricky because one of the most popular things...
Not even international. I'm talking every airport. Yeah.
Most of the things that are being sold are sandwiches, hamburgers, wraps. Even
Pizza.
Healthy items are like wraps or sandwiches,
Yeah.
But the number one, it's kind of comical at this point, but throughout our entire year, whether it was like Ireland or Mexico,
Paris,
or wherever we've been, the number one item that I can always find is a chicken Caesar salad. It's like if there's a menu and it's all pasta and it's all pizza, that you bet your bottom dollar.
Yeah.
They will be also selling a chicken Caesar salad.
You look at that fine print, my friend.
It's almost laughable because I've eaten so many of them just as the default thing that works for me. But,
well, I'm going to speak to this. We have a very poignant example. I've never used the word poignant before, but I just did. I did it twice. But we were in a very remote village in the Faroe Islands at a cafe, and well, lo and behold, a group of Americans walked in.
Oh, right.
And immediately they went up to the counter, just like us Americans, and we declare our dietary needs. Yeah. One lady was like, by the way, I am vegetarian, and this one over here is gluten-free only. And the lady in the counter, I was like, oh my gosh, what's about to happen?
I mean, this is somebody's house turned kitchen turned restaurant.
A village of 50 people. Mm-hmm. And the lady turns around and goes, no problem. I have gluten-free bread. Matter of fact, I even have gluten-free carrot cake. And I have a vegetarian option. Instead of a salmon or a meat, we have a falafel for you. And so don't be surprised that the whole world is actually catching on to this. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like in all our travels, every city we go to, it's not just if you go to a certain country, that's all the food they have. No, there's food from all over the world, and a lot of restaurants are, doing all kinds of diets now. Mm-hmm. So I think don't be too apprehensive.
What do you think about when we go spend some time in Tawau, Malaysia later this year, your hometown?
Okay, forget what I said. Nothing is true.
I was like, could you imagine going up to a restaurant in your town and being like gluten-free? They'd be like, gluten what?
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, okay. Okay.
Anyway, that's what I'm saying. You have to pick your destination.
Right.
But it is possible to travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is possible. Or, stick to the proteins.
And that
we have a lot of good ones.
That's true.
Should we even go to the next question? Because I feel like we've taken a lot of time.
You want to
We don't want to take too much time of our dear listeners' time.
You want to save it for the next episode?
But it's so good.
All right. Well, let's just do it fast.
Okay. All right. Well, I feel like it's helpful.
Yeah, it's helpful.
And we want to serve the listeners.
We want to serve the people.
Okay, I got a question that was delivered to me via internet. And this is what the mom asked. I was wondering if you have any advice to give for me and my kids. We are about to fly on a flight on Turkish Airlines to Istanbul, and then we have a layover to Croatia. I have 3 kids under 4, but the baby is in a car seat. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. How will they sleep on this flight? I've heard bad reviews about neck support pillows and even those leg extenders. Sorry, that was my Malaysian accent coming out. It comes out every now and then. These leg extenders that hook onto the table in the front. Help. Did you pack snacks, hosts? Give me some wisdom.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of rapid fire this so we don't,
take too much time.
Right. Rapid fire, I would say she's already bought the tickets. So speaking into...
Change them.
No, I'm not going to tell you to change
Call
them.
the airline, get the flight time so that your kids go to bed on the plane.
Well, that's what she's saying. Her kids are going to go to bed on the plane. That's what she needs help with.
I know. I'm just making sure that they're on the plane at, right about 7 p.m.
Okay, yeah, not 2 a.m.
Yeah, just call them, see what happens.
But one of the things I'll say, I went ahead and checked. Turkish Airlines does not allow the blow-up footrests right now. Ooh. And maybe ever. And I think that more airlines are going to lean that way because it's a safety hazard. You're blocking the walkway for someone to exit the plane safely. We've used them in the past, but I think it just means that we got airline stewardesses that just looked the other way.
The technology was still new then.
I know. Now they're kind of, I just read something the other day that someone was traveling to Paris and the stewardess was like, deflate immediately as soon as they blew it up.
In a French accent?
Probably. So it probably sounded cool, but it was still like, you're not allowed to have that.
Deflate.
So I would stay away from things like that because you're investing in something that's likely not allowed. And this is what I would tell you. I would get on the plane, make sure that you have comfy clothes on your kids or something for them to change into.
Bring the pajamas. It'll just kind of tell your kids that, oh, it's nap time.
Maybe bring along a comfort item. So an international overnight flight will supply you with a pillow and a blanket, those airline ones.
Ask for extras.
You could ask for extras, but also we usually let our girls bring along a stuffed animal. And so that or a small pillow. What do you mean? Like name their stuffed animals?
Yeah, name some.
We've got Pickles. We've got Mia. We've got Bear. We've got Teddy. We've got Uni.
Sunny. Can't forget Sunny.
What's the new cat's name? Oh, that's the new Mia.
That's Mia too.
Okay, so I would bring along a comfort item that could maybe act as a pillow or just something that also signifies we're going to sleep on this plane. When you're checking in to your flight, I would talk to the gate agent just to make sure that there aren't any empty seats on your plane. Because if it's not a full flight, you can offer or ask in kindness, be really kind, really gracious. It goes a long way. And ask if there are any open seats on the plane that you could maybe switch to in order to gain some extra space. That would be a huge win. Mm-hmm. And then I would say we sometimes have let Liv, we've made a pallet for her on the floor. She would be our younger one. So she's about 4.5, to allow Charlotte to have 2 seats to spread out on. And that has worked. We've never gotten yelled at for having one of our kids sleep on the floor, which doesn't really make sense because they're also obstructing the walkway.
Of course, wait for you to be in cruising altitude.
Right. And for the lights to go dim, everybody's sleeping. You got to sneak them down at the right time. But we've done that sometimes. And then what else? I think
we're going to get canceled by the airline industry.
They're like, don't tell anybody to sleep on the ground.
I wrote, go in there having like a battle mentality. It could go better or worse. Your kids could surprise you and fall asleep really easily. That's what happened to us. We were like, wow, how are you sleeping? Or it could go worse. Now, when it goes worse, there's lots of ways to reverse engineer this before they get into frantic mode and using their prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
Before they go there, you kind of just want to deflate the situation, offer up some things to boost up your blood sugar. Maybe you let them hit the button and the cart comes and you're like, do you want to pick a chocolate bar that we can share? And you guys share one. You guys are all in good spirits. And if they want to stay up and watch a movie, let them watch a movie. The goal is that they're not bothering other people. Your goal is to just get there.
Yeah, and we pretty much plan our trips in such a way that the first day we get somewhere is a rest day. And with that in mind, if you have any, flexibility in your schedule, know that the goal on the plane is just to get there however you can. So maybe your kids are going to fall asleep. Maybe one of them won't fall asleep, but they'll quietly watch a show while your other kid sleeps. And so it really is just kind of putting out fires and giving everyone the best shot at making it to the destination
peacefully
without falling apart. And then you can make up on sleep when you get to your hotel. You can kind of get back some of the momentum that you lost. But I think ultimately it really has to do with our attitude as the parents. And that can be really tricky because we're exhausted too.
Right.
And so I think just a lot of grace going into it. And the very last thing I'll add is if you're landing somewhere in the middle of the night, it can be hard to anticipate or think ahead to carrying sleeping children through an airport.
Right.
There have been so many times that we've landed and our kids' bodies think it's like 2 or 3 a.m. and they're just like noodles. We can barely even hold them because they're just floppy. And so we would travel with a stroller that can go in the overhead compartment. That way, when you land, you don't have to wait to get your stroller at baggage claim, but you pull it down, put your sleeping kid in it, and then you can walk the 18 miles through to customs and baggage claim because it always feels like a marathon.
It's always, especially people like us that always get the cheap flights. We always get the budget airlines, and they always get the furthest gates.
Yeah, it's true. But just a little shout out to our friend that sent in this question.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Don't forget to take care of yourself. If you're having a good time, they're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
And also, of course, do not forget to pack snacks.
And the plane ride is only one small part of your trip. So you just got to get there.
Right.
And then
just get there.
The rest of it will be a little
Get
bit
a nice
easier.
hotel when you arrive with some poolside service. Let the kids play in the pool, and you can order drinks and foods.
Or if you're just in your hotel room, put them all to bed and then order yourself some drinks
Yeah.
and some food.
Yeah.
And celebrate making
treat
it.
yourself.
Okay, so let's talk about what we're really here to talk about.
Okay. Whew, we got some burning questions out of the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that we have served you guys well. I mean, I feel like we already did 2 podcasts already.
I know. I mean, we're talking about eating grain-free internationally. We're talking about kids on planes.
Holy cow.
Wow.
And now we're about to just jump into Act 3. This is our final act of the episode.
This sounds like a podcast you should tell your friends about.
Wow. Yeah, maybe even, I don't know, write a review so other people can find out about how resourceful this podcast is.
That's a good idea. Where could they do that?
Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review, you can follow it on Spotify, leave a comment on YouTube, or just tell your neighbor, go up to them, shake a hand, like, hey, my name is Sharon. I would like to tell you about this podcast.
It's called Did You Pack Snacks, a family travel podcast by Colin and Meg.
Yeah, maybe you want to even print some flyers and hang it at your community Starbucks. Why not?
Well, that would be awesome.
Well, get on it.
Okay, so you have a friend.
Yes, I don't have just one friend. I have more than one.
But you have a friend that kind of inspired us talking about this today.
Yes.
Because tell the people what he did.
Okay, so a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, he was like, Colin, I know you host a podcast. Anyway, he went on and on about the podcast and how great it is. I won't go into that. I will not. Okay. But he said, hey, I really need your help. It's our 10-year anniversary. We haven't gone on a big trip since we had kids. We now have 3 girls. One's like a toddler. But it's our 10-year anniversary, and I want to do something special, something extended, not like rushed, like an adventure. And I was like, great. That is like my love language. And that is like the kind of travel that I love. And so I kind of gave him some options, didn't hear from him. A month later, I get a text and it says, we did it, in all caps. And I said, did what? He goes, we did it. We went to Costa Rica for a month. And he sends me a photo. It's a gorgeous fiery red sky sunset. The whole family standing there together, embracing each other, smiling, and on the beach. And there are giant turtles all around them because they are in Costa Rica. They did it, Megan.
They did
They went and did it.
And I think it's really incredible because then you were starting to tell me about their schedule.
Right.
Because they didn't just go as a family of 5.
No.
Their first week, they brought who?
They brought his brother, I believe. And that was to kind of just help get situated, get adjusted to a new country. Because you're going in on the long haul. You're not just going on a quick trip, right? And so they got the brother, and then he left to go back. And then that's when they had family time. And then at the end of the trip, once everyone was settled, they had a rhythm, they had a routine, they flew in a babysitter to come for a few days so that him and his wife can go on a couple's getaway. So this was a 3-in-1. You got family adventure, family vacation, and you got a couple's getaway all in one.
That is so cool. I have dreamed about taking a babysitter with us somewhere. And if you're listening and you babysit for us, you better keep saying yes, because next year is our 10-year anniversary. And maybe we're going to want somebody to tag along so we can have a family adventure and a couple's getaway all in one.
Right.
So and to all you babysitters out there,
free trip. Yeah. Hang on to us. Don't give up on us. Is what we're saying.
For real, that is really incredible. I'm so glad that they got to experience that together.
Yeah, and what a success story. And it all started with like, hey, Costa Rica flights are really cheap right now. So they live in Virginia. I'm guessing that they flew out of one of the major airports there, maybe around DC, and went for it. They rented a car. They did the dirt bikes around the mountains, all the beaches, waterfall hikes, all of it.
Okay, so let's talk about the families that could benefit from this or that may just even want to do this, because it's not just people, like we said, that are looking to do this full time as a lifestyle. It could just be people that want to work remotely. And I think that since 2020 and that whole shift in the work dynamic, that it's more popular now or more acceptable now for employers to let their employees work remotely. And maybe that's something that in your line of work is a thing. Maybe it's not a thing, yet. And it could be a conversation that you could navigate. Or this experience might be one that you have to save all your PTO days for and maybe pair it with public holidays. You know, I always feel like November is a fun time to go on a long trip. Because, sorry, I had to scratch my nose. I'm so itchy.
Don't worry. The whole world now knows that you had an itchy nose. But go ahead.
But something like November, because you already get all of those days off for Thanksgiving. So if you paired PTO days with holidays, it could really extend the time you have to be overseas. So let's talk about when we're choosing or how we would advise someone to choose a place to base themselves for a month.
Yeah.
What are some things that in our experience, having done this before, would be prerequisites to choosing a location to stay for a month as a family?
Yeah, because in 1 year, we did this almost 12 times, didn't we? And in that year, we traveled to 15 countries and we spent over 300 days abroad doing this rinse and repeat. And finally, we decided to move back here. So we've done this a lot, and I would say my number one criteria was we always picked a destination that would be a base to then branch out, and we could do excursions from there. So like pick a good home base, but with different flavors. So for instance, one of our home bases was Bangkok. And the reason why we chose it is because of course, we love Thailand. We have friends there. We wanted to be in the city, but also we could go to beaches. We could go to mountains on the weekends. And that's what we did. One weekend, we went down south to visit all the beaches. The other weekend, we actually did a road trip to Cambodia to see Angkor Wat and had the most unforgettable weekend. And then in between all those adventures, we were exploring Bangkok. We were being tourists. We enjoyed all the amenities of a city, and I was still able to work, you know? So that is criteria number one. Pick a home base that has a lot going on in the city, but also has a lot of close by destinations that you could just go in a day or a weekend.
Right. And that leads me to my number one prerequisite. You know, as the person in our family that was responsible more so for our kids, it's important to look at the destination through the lens of what is my actual day-to-day life going to look like? Because planning your weekends out is one thing, but making sure that Monday through Friday or whatever days that you're going to designate to work, what does that look like for the people that aren't working? You know, do I feel comfortable navigating this area by myself with 2 kids? Is there public transportation here? How accessible is that? How stressful is that? Are there places for kids to play? Are there playgrounds within walking distance? You know, just kind of looking through what is your actual day going to look like. And, you know, some of that you may not be able to know fully until you're there, but just making sure that the framework is possible. Maybe asking the Airbnb before you book, hey, are there any playgrounds within walking distance? Asking their advice for indoor things for kids to do. Reading online about how easy it is to navigate the transportation in that city.
And Google Street View it.
Check it out. See how it feels. And I mean, honestly, that's one of the reasons why I do love Airbnb. sometimes over a hotel is because the reviews can be a lot more specific and personal, where a hotel review is really just telling you about your accommodations. Often you'll find in an Airbnb review, people reviewing the neighborhood, how safe they felt, how close it was to restaurants. And so maybe just even using that as a resource, whether you book an Airbnb or not, and looking up that area to see what the local people or what the vibe is. But yeah, making sure that wherever you go, you're looking at the lens of your day-to-day life too.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of wanted to go back to my first point because I realized that what I gave was my opinion, and that but the reason I chose it was because, you want to have one place to stay so that all your suitcases there, you save money that way. But then there's probably a lot of people out there that are like, well, I only want to spend a week here and then I'm going to go spend a week in another place. Or like the people that have maybe a higher budget that's like, why stay in one place when I can just keep on going and I'm going to do a whole tour of New Zealand and move every 2-3 nights. That's completely up to you. I will say having a home base just helps really assimilate to the culture even more. You get to know people and you save money, and you're not having travel fatigue on this big adventure that you've planned for so long, right? And I thought just having that, I don't know, I just kind of wanted to bring that up.
Well, and that's the difference between, you have to decide, if you're going on this trip and you are working, it's unlikely that you'll be able to move that frequently and be able to work and be able to explore and have time with your family, where you're just looking at things nearby.
Yeah.
But if you're taking PTO and this is a full-on vacation, well, that's something completely different.
Right.
That means that you have 24 hours in a day. You get to designate what you're doing in that time. And that makes more sense going from one place to another. I think maybe our conversation here was probably leaning more towards what we do, which is travel somewhere where you also are holding office hours.
Right.
So that could make sense why you had that perspective.
Yeah. Another thing to bring up is how you're going to get around mainly. I mean, there's a lot of countries that we rented a car, and then in some countries we couldn't afford to rent a car for that long. And so we opted for cities that had trains and buses, and then we would only rent a car for 2 days at a time, 3 days at a time on our excursions. So take all that into consideration and how you want to do it.
In terms of booking housing, so that's probably one of your biggest line items in addition to airfare.
Yeah.
Some of the things to keep in mind are you can book hotels with points and miles. So that's one way that we save a lot of money and we're able to travel to places and stay for longer periods of time. The thing that you're going to miss out on in a hotel, though, is having a kitchen and having laundry. So I think for us, staying in a place for multiple weeks, laundry and a kitchen are kind of essential.
Yeah.
So I would lean towards staying in an Airbnb. But one thing that you can do, just a tip, is if you're looking at a place that's available when you want to go, that you have permission to message that host and ask for a deal.
Yeah.
So if you have a budget that you're trying to meet and the total for that Airbnb comes out to be more than what you budgeted for, you can ask them for a discount. We've been told no before, but we've also been told yes before.
Lots and lots of yeses. I mean, we have saved thousands of dollars
by simply asking in a kind way. You know, we really want to come to this location. Your Airbnb looks incredible. It looks like our dates are open, and this is our budget. This is what we can afford to spend for this amount of time.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how many people are willing to have that conversation with you because it benefits them from having one family for a longer period of time. They have to clean it less.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry. It's guaranteed income. So don't be afraid to ask for a discount.
Yeah. And on that note, speaking of Airbnbs, there are some things to consider when you're doing a longer trip. There are things like, how do I do dishes? How do I do laundry? Where do I take the trash out to? So you gave me 2 trash bags. What do I do now? And so there are certain things where like you're kind of forced into being a sort of local, like you're part of the neighborhood now. And I felt like when we did this, a lot of Airbnb hosts were not equipping their guests to do these sort of things because they were just expecting them to be there for the weekend. You're here for a bachelor party, whatnot. And so you don't need all this. But what we've learned, especially on these longer trips, have that communication up ahead, or at least know where the closest grocery store is. And you got to ask them questions and figure all that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the fun part.
Okay.
Where would we tell people to go and why?
All right. So yeah, based on take everything that we just said, and these were some of the places that we have stayed before, and you can kind of see the pattern now why we chose those places. So number 1, top of my list was Melbourne, Australia. I always wanted to go there.
Always.
Because in my mind, I pretend that I am Bandit, Charlotte is Bluey, and Liv is Bingo. And you are Chili.
I was going to say, am I in the family?
Yeah. But I'm not sure because you don't really play along as much as I do. But in my mind, I am Bandit. And for those of you who don't know, we're talking about the hit Disney show, Bluey. That's based in Australia. Anyways, we chose Melbourne because it was a city packed with everything you need, from festivals to malls to all kinds of restaurants, lots of Asian food. But then on the weekends, we were able to go see penguins, see koalas, go to the Great Ocean Road.
We went to Tasmania on a road trip, which was so fun.
Right, or as the locals call it, Tassie.
Went to Tassie.
Right, and we saw Tasmanian devils, lots and lots of wallabies.
We went to Sydney for a weekend.
Right.
It was an incredible destination, and I think an advantage to acclimating quickly was obviously that there was no language barrier. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that was really helpful just in getting to experience it fully. It felt like there wasn't really a time period where we were adjusting. We just kind of hit the ground running, and that was really fun.
Yeah. And the thing about month-long trips too is that like going as a tourist can be really expensive because you're just eating out all the time. But the funny thing about living there for a longer time and having a kitchen is that you can actually save a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, we mainly ate indoors. We mainly cooked in our apartment all the time. We had a grocery store on like the first level of our apartment building, which was incredible. And you could take the shopping cart all the way up to like the 18th floor, unload your groceries and bring it all the way back down.
Right.
But yeah, we ate a lot of meals inside. I said it again, inside, as opposed to outside.
Yeah. But that was one of the scenarios too, where when it came to transportation, we were fine to Uber anywhere in the city. And then on weekends, we rented an RV. We rented a car for a quick getaway. And so, yeah, Melbourne. What's next?
The next place on our list, we kind of already alluded to, but we put Bangkok. And for all the reasons that Colin already shared, we feel like it was a great place to base ourselves. We found accommodations to be really affordable in Bangkok. There are so many great Airbnbs in the city. We found food to be crazy affordable.
I mean, I think our apartment was $1,500 a month in the heart of the city.
Yeah.
You walk outside, there's a 7-Eleven where you can get all your meals / street food, or we can go to the mall and get a really bougie ramen restaurant.
Getting around was really easy. You have Grabs, you have tuk-tuks, you have public transportation.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things for our kids to do. And then if you've never been to Thailand, or maybe if you have, like Colin said, there are a lot of adventures that you can take on the weekends. So that's why it made our list.
Yep. And it had a washer dryer. No, I correct myself. It had no dryer. It had the power of the sun.
Yes, I was going to say, you almost can guarantee yourself a washer anywhere you go.
Yeah.
But a dryer is a luxury.
Yeah, so do not overpack, especially on these month-long trips. Don't do what we did. We slugged giant suitcases all over the world. And now looking back at it, I'm like, why?
We did that because we were going from hot climate to cold climate. And you can't...
Because we are overachievers.
I know, but just stick to one climate. It makes packing way easier.
Stick to one climate, preferably the warm ones. And yeah, don't overpack. When you get to a new country, go shopping.
Buy what you need.
That's what I love. I feel like every other country in this world has better clothing than the US.
You love to shop.
I hate to admit it, but I do.
Okay, what's next?
Next up, we got Edinburgh, Scotland, which is another cool city. Not too big. You're not overwhelmed. Great transportation system.
And it's really walkable.
Right.
There were a lot of public parks everywhere you went. It was beautiful, charming. We stayed in a very tourist part of the city. I think I would switch that if we were to go back.
Mm-hmm.
But still, we were close to everything. Close to grocery stores and restaurants and things to do. Coffee shops downstairs. It really just felt like a great place to hang because then, like you're saying, all of the places that we got to visit in addition to Edinburgh, we went down to Manchester for a Man United game.
Yep.
We went to London. We explored like Glencoe and then went all the way out to...
We got an RV and went all the way up to the Isle of Skye.
The Isle of Skye.
And then on our last weekend, we were like, let's just go for one more hoorah.
We went to Craigiveir Castle.
Right. We rented a car and just drove.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
There was so much to do. I mean, we didn't even hit all the places that we wanted to visit because we ran out of time. But again, I think that's another one of the locations that there's a slight advantage because of the language.
Yeah.
That I feel like we felt comfortable really quickly.
Right.
Because we could read street signs and
I will say
signs.
in Bangkok though, I mean, I ordered food delivered to our apartment and it was all in Thai and I got by with Google Translate.
Yeah. Well, I know there are ways to do it.
Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. Next up.
Next up is...
This is a fun one.
Dubrovnik, Croatia.
Because it is popping. A lot of people are saying go to Croatia. And it's been that way for a couple of years now. A lot of people say it's the cheaper version of Italy. I beg to differ.
It's very different than Italy. But if you're looking for a summer destination with that turquoise blue water and beaches and beautiful cities and architecture, like Croatia is the place to go.
Yeah.
It's crazy affordable compared to some major European cities.
Lodging wise, absolutely.
Lodging wise. We had a cute little apartment in the old city of Dubrovnik, which is basically, if you look up Dubrovnik, it's the most photographed part of the city. It's these buildings surrounded by an old city wall. And it was just so unique. Like everything about it, I feel like was special because I've never been anywhere like that before.
Yeah, like we stepped back in time.
Yeah. And then you can visit other major cities. We did a road trip to Split. There are a bunch of national parks full of waterfalls. Waterfalls are like this part of the world's got it going on.
Right.
And we did a trip to Montenegro.
Yep.
We did a weekend trip to Bosnia.
Right. Which Bosnia was another time warp in itself.
It really was.
Yeah.
But we'd never been. And so it was really cool part of the world that we got to explore. And it was unique and beautiful. And yeah, I think if you're looking to go somewhere in the warmer months, I would put Croatia on the top of your list.
Yeah, lots of great islands. And again, like right outside the city walls, there was a car rental place. So that's what we did. Friday morning, Friday afternoon, hopped in a car, drove to a new country.
Yeah.
And yeah, super
then returned the car and said, see you next weekend.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, do you remember the one thing I will say in Dubrovnik? There are a lot of stairs. So it's an old city. There are a lot of cats too. But it's an old city, built on the side of a mountain. And so to get to almost any apartment are just 100 stairs.
I mean, yeah,
maybe 150.
In my mind, my brain's telling me 138.
I just remember going from dinner to the apartment. All of us would just let out a big sigh.
Oh gosh.
We got our steps in that month, and then carrying groceries up those stairs. That was something to remember.
Oh, mems.
So be mindful if you stay there of the stair climb. Maybe stay on one of the lower apartments. But anyway.
Yeah. All right, let's end this with a bang. We are taking you to the last frontier, the final frontier, which is Alaska. And we're telling you to base yourselves in the city of Anchorage.
Yes, we loved Anchorage for all the reasons that we've shared. It hit all of our prerequisites, except we forgot to book a place with laundry. This was like our very first month.
Right.
And I think we just assumed, it's
American.
America. They have a washer and dryer. No,
Nope.
They didn't. But yeah, Anchorage was so much fun. It's a really small city, you know, in terms of US cities. It's very small.
Yeah.
But it's next to everything beautiful.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. You can drive an hour and you can be hiking on a glacier. Like we hiked on a glacier with 2-year-olds. You can drive 2 hours and you can be in a whole new city and get on a cruise ship to go see more fjords and glaciers and whales.
National parks galore.
Yeah, drive 4 hours south or 5 hours north. All that stuff is there.
Yeah, we went to Denali National Park. We saw moose. We saw whales. I mean, there was so much going on. And then even when we weren't driving an obscene amount of hours north or south or west or whatever, even within like 30 minutes of Anchorage, we'd end up at a beautiful lake or a small hike, or even 15 minutes from downtown, there were beautiful places to go explore.
Right.
And so I just think that it was incredible because there was never a shortage of things to do outside.
Yeah.
And that's
it's definitely a nature, like an outdoor lover's place.
for sure.
Yeah. And the cool thing about Anchorage is, again, if you went back to all our criterias, we messed up on the laundry, but we were able to rent a car. Mm-hmm. We had a car for a month because in America you need a car. But then I was still able to work. I finished a whole design project on a book sitting in a Barnes and Nobles. And then on the way home, I would grab things from Target. So you have all these like extreme experiences, like hiking on a glacier. And then you also have your Targets and your Walmarts, you know?
The conveniences of home.
Right. And so it's like one of those like perfect blends. If you feel like you don't want to leave the country just yet, Anchorage would be a great place. I'm sure there are a lot of cities in America that can kind of offer the same vibe too.
Yeah. And I will say my last thought about Anchorage was our accommodations were more expensive than international destinations.
Yes.
But our activities were free.
Right.
You know, all the time that we spent outside, we didn't have to pay for that. So, you know, some pros, some cons. You got to work it out in the budget. But I think that these are 5 really good suggestions if you're thinking about tackling a trip or an experience like this. This is a good head start.
Yeah. And if you are currently planning a trip like this, can you please let us know? Nothing makes me happier when like people are planning for travel and I just want to like jump in the conversation and just listen.
It brings you a lot of joy.
You know?
Yeah.
But anyways, we hope this has been helpful. Folks, do not forget to pack snacks. Come back next week for another episode on family travel.
See you then.
Bye.